Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Herd Mentality. And welcome to another live. This lesson, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, is inspired by a lesson that Elder Apostle Tar did. And I believe he mentioned the term herd mentality. And this is the problem with most people of the world. They have something called a herd mentality, which we're going to read about herd mentality. We're going to get some precepts, and Lord's will, this lesson will be edifying. And, most people out there, that so-called function in society, they always have to be in groups, in packs. It's very rare where you'll see an individual that's pretty much dolo, or has few friends, or, goes about his life, mostly by himself, because the average person out there has to have a group of people in order to survive, just like animals do too. That's where the term herd mentality comes from. It comes from animals. Because if you notice, animals travel in packs, of the same, because there's safety in numbers, in most cases. But as we're going to read in this article, according to the herd mentality mindset, it's not always good to travel in that. And this is the reason, because, just because the majority of people go with it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. And this is why in this herd mentality, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to take the microchip because they're going to see everybody else taking it. They're going to see masses of people taking the microchip and how they're benefiting from it at first, and they're going to be compelled to follow that herd mentality and actually take the microchip so that they can do better and be safe, so to speak, and be able to function and eat and all of those and work and all of that stuff, and it's gonna get a lot of people killed, that herd mentality. Salaki, I got my little coffee/tea. I know it sounds crazy. It says how to identify, understand, and avoid herd mentality. I copied the address and put it in the description box, so if brothers want to read more of this article, they can. I'm going to read some of it. I'm not sure how far we're going to get in it. But just to give you an idea of herd mentality, this says herd mentality can be found throughout society, as well as amongst animals. This evolutionary tool has helped mammals survive dangerous situations by running and hiding from the same threat, to remain in social packs, and to get along in groups. However, this phenomenon is not always positive, and by understanding it and knowing how to recognize it, you can mitigate, means minimize the danger, its effect. Because when you look up the word mitigate, it's to make less severe, serious, or painful. So you can lessen the severity of it by being able to understand and recognize it, its effects. Not only are you able to avoid herd mentality, you can also disrupt its patterns amongst groups in everyday scenarios. And pretty much, this lesson is not centered around you should live your life by yourself. You should have no friends. You shouldn't be around anybody, And I mean, I mean by that, I'm talking about the main people you should be amongst is the brotherhood. Of course, you're going to be around your woman and your children, You know, and some brothers are cool with certain family members, but they don't really hang out with them like that, but they may see them from time to time. So it's not saying, you know, just to go live like a hermit, be alone. You know, if that's not your spirit, then don't try to be something that you're not. One sure way to mess yourself up in this knowledge is trying to do something or try to be somebody that you're not. Be who you are. You know, be the best that you can be in this truth, but be who you are. Don't try to mimic anyone. Ask the Lord to give you, you know, to understand what your spirit is about and get into that and build that up. Don't try to, you see an apostle or an elder or a brother, you know, and you like the way they move and the way they act, and, you know, they say, I'm going to be just like that. No, be yourself. Because that is one of the ways you could destroy yourself, because you're trying to be like somebody else. That man has a different walk in this truth than you do. You can't be that man. You have to be who the Lord gave you to be. So in order to do that, you have to pray, you know, ask the Lord to guide you, you know, as we always do, to find out what is our best gift that the Lord gave us and build upon that. That way you know that you're not trying to keep up with somebody based on the way that they are. And you'll be able to build your spirit up in this truth better that way. Because you're building, as a so-called Christians say, that personal relationship between you and Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. And able to build yourself up. And you'll notice a better growth than trying to be somebody else. And now you got to fight to try to keep up that persona. Try to keep up that facade. And that's not you. All right. So when we do these lessons, you know, keep in mind that, you know, don't throw common sense out the window, as the elder Apostle Torah always says. It says, what is herd mentality? Herd mentality is the inclination for individuals within a group to follow along with what the group at large thinks or does. Okay? Now, I got some precepts on it. You know, I'm going to hold off unless the Spirit makes me go to them. You know, I'm going to try to get through some of this just to give you an idea of what this is. So let's read that again. Herd mentality is the inclination for individuals within a group to follow along with what the group at large thinks or does. Now, before we read on, let's go real quick let's get rid of this. Let's go to Proverbs 14 and 12. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. You see? So just because something seems right doesn't mean that it always is. So how do you fact check if something is right or wrong? We have the scriptures to direct us, to instruct us. So if the scriptures say don't eat pork, but you're saying, well, you know, we're under grace, I am a little hungry, you know, I haven't eaten none all day, you know, all that's available is a pork chop sandwich. You know, the Lord ain't gonna get mad. See, you operating in a reprobate spirit. You know, it says, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Now let's go from there to Romans 6 and 20. For when you were the servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. And we were all servants of sin at one time, until Yahweh Bashem Shai woke us up. We were crucified in Yahweh Bashem Shai. Our old man died, and a new man started to take life. When you read the whole book of Romans, the 6th chapter, if you want to really understand a good understanding of that, read the book of Romans, the 6th chapter, and others. But this is a very good chapter to show you how the old man dies and the new man is born. So it says, when you were servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. Why? Because we weren't doing the right things, even though we knew certain things that were right, but we were doing all the wrong things in the sight of the Lord. It says, what fruit had ye then in those things whereof you are now ashamed? See, because those things brought shame. That's why the Apostle Paul said, he didn't know sin unless the law said such and such. So when the law revived, he said, I died. You see, and then we started to get the remorse. We started to get the, damn, that wasn't right. You know, the humility and the hoping that the Lord will have mercy on us in our ignorance, you know, and in our wicked deeds that we were doing. So it says, what fruit had ye then in those things whereof you are now ashamed? To the end of those things, for the end of those things is what? Death. That's all we read. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. So it says, what fruit had ye then in those things whereof you are now ashamed? For the end of those things is death. You see, and this and what this scripture here proves too is when we woke up, the things that we did made us ashamed, right? But remember, in the kingdom, those that forsake the way of the Lord, the 2/3 in this time, and the ones that get destroyed, in the kingdom, they're going to be ashamed. Because in the kingdom, they're going to know righteousness. They're going to be righteous. They're going to have the law, statutes, and commandments written in their hearts. They're going to be changed, you know, through whatever man and woman the Lord sends that spirit through. So now we get a sort of a glimpse into how they're going to feel, you know, once the kingdom is established and they come back. So let's read that again. What fruit had ye then in those things whereof you are now ashamed? For the end of those things is death. All right. So now let's go back to the article, because we read here, it says herd mentality is the inclination for individuals within a group to follow along with what the group at large thinks or does, because they're thinking that it's right because more people are doing it. And there's a cartoon here, which we're going to look in a minute, which shows you that. It says, it is also known as mob behavior, group mind, group think, crowd psychology, and other similar terms. Every child is familiar with the idea of herd mentality thanks to the age-old question from their parents, if Johnny jumped off a cliff, would you jump too? It says, I don't know where we're going, but from the look of this crowd, it's got to be good. I don't know where we're going, but from the look of this crowd, it's got to be good. And you see a bunch of sheep look like they're following along in a herd, but the herd is leading off what? Off of the cliff. Matter of fact, let's go real quick to Matthew 15, and then we got other precepts. Matthew 15, I believe it's Matthew 15 and 13. But he answered and said, every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be rooted up. Let them alone, they be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. Why? Because they have that herd mentality. Let's go to Matthew 7 and 13. Enter ye in at the straight gate. What is the straight gate? The word straight, S-T-R-A-I-T, not straight ahead, but straight is a position of difficulty. So enter in at the straight gate, because it's harder to go in the straight gate, because the scriptures speak about one man being able to go in there at a time. So it's not going to be something where a whole crowd of people are going to come all in, you know, through that gate at the same time. You got to go in one at a time. It says, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. So when you see individuals in hordes, you know, going into something, some type of religion or some type of way, you know that it's not the right way, because that's the way that leads to destruction. But the way wherein one has to struggle to get into that gate, that's the right way. You see? So straight gate is a position of difficulty, which is a hard way, but it's also just that narrow path to be able to get to righteousness, which in this society, to be righteous you get a harder way to go than if you were totally just straight up wicked. It says, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way When you look up the Straits of Gibraltar, or the Straits of whatever, the Straits of Hormuz, or the Straits of whatever, why do they call it straits? Because the body of water is big, but then when you get to these two masses of land that are not too far from each other, it gets real narrow. And this straits is a position of difficulty because you have to be an expert navigator to be able to get through that so that you don't run the ship aground. That you don't hit something, you don't get too close to either side to where something destroys the ship. So that's the way this truth is. You know, it's that narrow path that we have to take. When we read, what is that? Is that 2nd Ezra, the 7th chapter? And it speaks about, you know, on one side is water and on the other side is fire. That's that path to be able to take to get to the kingdom of heaven, which is a narrow, straight, difficult path. And that's why the Apostle Paul said that confirming the souls of the disciples, that we through much tribulation ought to enter into the kingdom. So it says, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. So that's why you have the herd mentality. I don't know where we're going, but from the looks of this crowd, it's got to be good. And where they're going? To their death. Why? Because they're following that herd mentality. When we're reading that the way to get to the kingdom of heaven is a narrow and straight way, because of the broad way, you know, leads unto destruction. The wide and broad way leads unto destruction. All right. So now let's go back here. It says typically herd mentality refers to an emotional level of influence rather than a rational one. See, wow, what's the name? How that scripture goes? Wise man foreseeth. Let me see. Wise man. Just bear with me 1 second if I could find this. Maybe it's in the Apocrypha. If your brother knows where it is, a wise man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself. Let me try foreseeth the evil. See if that comes up. Okay. Proverbs 22:3. A wise man, a prudent man, foreseeth the evil and hideth himself. See? But the simple pass on and are punished. So that's what we have right here. This is the simplicity mentality. Typically, herd mentality refers to an emotional level of influence rather than a rational, because they're not thinking that is this right or wrong, because they're not reasoning. They're not exercising discernment, because they're looking at it that the mentality that they have is that, well, all these people are going that way, so let me go that way. And that's going to be what's going to get a lot of people killed dealing with this microchip. All right. Which often leads to poor decisions, see, compared with what the individual would have done without outside influence. Because now you're forced to think. That's why we read here, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. And these are both the same scripture, you know. So a prudent man is what? A man of wisdom. He'll be able to spot, you know, situations that are not right and avoid them. And that leads us to this precept here. You know, I mean, I have this the one in the Exodus, but I haven't got a chance to get to it. It says Proverbs 4:14, enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not into the way of evil men. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. For they sleep not except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. You see? The 19th verse, the way of the wicked is as darkness, they know not at what they stumble, because eventually what's going to happen? They're going to end up being destroyed. All right? Excuse me. So let's go back. This concept is therefore used to explain why a group of people or animals, in fact, generally behave differently to an individual, because the people are going with the herd mentality, with the as they call it, where is it? Group mind, mob behavior, crowd psychology, groupthink. Okay, they're not rationalizing it as far as wisdom is concerned. Is this the right way to think, right thing to do? Is this the wrong thing to do? No, if I did this, what would happen? What would be the outcome if I did this or if I did that? But if I did this, so they're not calculating what they're doing. They're just going along with the whole crowd scenario. And matter of fact, let's go to Exodus 23:1. Thou shalt not raise a false report, put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Right, and putting your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness, this is what they did to Yahushua when they caused him to be crucified. You see? And I got some precepts on that, Lord's will, if we get a chance to get to it. It says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. So we're not supposed to go with the crowd. Because most times when you see a crowd of people going in one direction, doing something, it's usually not right. It's very rare where you'll see a multitude of people doing something that is right. I'll say 99.9% of the time is wrong. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in the cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Right, because you're going to give a decision against somebody because everybody else is given that decision, even though you know that decision is wrong. And this could apply to those unity camps. Everybody wants to come together as one, but nobody wants to speak about certain issues that they all have in the different doctrines. You see? So let's read that again. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in the cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Because at the end of the day, that herd mentality is not good. It says common examples of herd mentality. For example, herd mentality is often seen in the stock market. One of the latest hot topics on the market has been the booming cannabis industry. And in late 2018, few companies saw growth quite like U.S.-based pharmaceutical group Tilray. After opening in July 2018 at $17 per share, stock soared in September to over $300 per share, before quickly dropping down again to $150 per share within the space of weeks. In instances such as the Tilray example, the group of investors pushed the prices up by all jumping on board at the same time, yet these prices can adjust as easily burst or collapse when the tide starts to turn amongst the group and everyone sells their investments again. It's also easy to find examples of herd mentality in school groups, given the complex social network that exists within middle and high schools and how easily influenced young people often are by their peers. Take, for example, the trend of fidget spinners, a simple and frankly rather boring toy originally designed to help students struggling to focus became a nationwide obsession. It wasn't because fidget spinners were the best toy ever invented. It was because once a few kids had them, everyone wanted them. See, and that's that herd mentality. It's got to be good. Everybody else is doing it. You see? Generally speaking, and this is why, like I mentioned those unity camps, and this is why the majority of Israel, when they see that, yeah, this is good to see the brothers coming together like this. This is what I'm talking about, man. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, man. Scripture say if you all speak, you're all supposed to be speaking the same thing. We're supposed to be teaching the same thing. Just because we're all the same nation doesn't mean that we all come together as one. The only way that could be done is if we are of the same mind as far as the doctrine is concerned. Then that's cool. What did Yahushua say when his mother and brothers and sisters and them came to him? You know, they desired to see him while he was kicking it with his disciples. He said, who is my mother, my brother, and my sisters, but they that do the will of my Father? The same as my mother and my brother and my sister. He didn't say, oh, well, these are my family members. Let me just let them in. No. It went far beyond that. It had to be with those that had the same mentality, the same doctrine. You know, there was no deviations. There wasn't no one guy who was teaching Cornelius as an Edomite, another guy is teaching that Cornelius is an Israelite. None of that. Those are divisions in the doctrine, and that's not good, because that's going to lead to nothing but confusion. So it says, generally speaking, group decisions like these lack the creativity and accuracy that might otherwise be found in an individual's decision making. Instead of a child being creative and choosing their own toy, or an inventor being accurate and researching the market before making an investment, humans are more likely to simply go with the crowd. See, and that go with the crowd spirit is not good, even if it's not objectively the best or wisest decision. And in most cases, you know, the majority of people, what they do is not correct. Many psychologists and researchers have taken interest in the subject, which has resulted in a wealth of fascinating studies and papers. In one widely referenced study by Professor Jens Krause at the University of Leeds, researchers told 200 people to hang around a hall. They were told not to talk to one another or even make gestures, ensuring there was minimal communication between individuals. Researchers then gave just 10 people from the group directions on where to walk, and found that the rest quickly followed suit. As a result, the study states that it takes just 5% of a crowd to influence the rest. Because remember, keeping that in mind, let's read this again, and let's hit this other precept that I got. Exodus 23:2. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many, to wrest judgment. Now let's read this part again. It says, researchers then gave 10 people from the group directions on where to walk, and found that the rest quickly followed suit. As a result, the study states that it takes 5% of a crowd to influence the rest. Y'all get that? Now let's go to Matthew 15:11. But the chief priests moved the people. See? So this would be the 5%. That wasn't really that many. So what did they do? They moved the people that he should rather release Barabbas unto them. So the wicked Pharisees in them, which were less in number than the multitude of the crowd, influenced the crowd into asking Pontius Pilate for Barabbas, a murderer and a thief, instead of Yahushua. And instead of these people being objective, which they couldn't be, I mean, when we know the bigger picture that 2/3 are going to die anyway, you know, but just being objective, if they would have sat there and thought about it, said, wait a minute, this man didn't do anything. Now, on the other hand, Pontius Pilate, which was by himself, he examined both sides and came to the conclusion that Yahushua didn't do anything wrong. And then he also came to the realization that they delivered him because of envy, because they envied Yahushua. Now, he wasn't influenced by the crowd. He was there examining, talking to the wicked Pharisees and them, talking to Yahushua, you know, and he came to the conclusion that this is a just man. He didn't do anything wrong. But the other people, they were influenced by these chief priests. It says, but the chief priest moved the people that he should rather release Barabbas unto them. And Pilate answered and said again unto them, what will ye that I shall do unto him whom ye call the King of the Jews? And they cried out again, crucify him. See? Then Pilate said unto them, why? What evil hath he done? And they cried out the more exceedingly, crucify him. Why? Because they were led by those wicked Pharisees and Sadducees, those rulers, those leaders. That's why it says in the book of Exodus, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Okay? So going back, and so Pilate, willing to content the people, released Barabbas unto them and delivered Yahushua when he had scourged him to be crucified. And the soldiers led him away into the hall called Praetorium, and they called together the whole band. And they clothed him with purple and plaited a crown of thorns and put it about his head and began to salute him, hail King of the Jews. Let's see. I'm not sure if there was more. All right, so that was the main point. Now let's go to, matter of fact, before we go there, let's go bring this over here. Let's bring this over here. Let's go back to some of this. So as a result, the study states that it takes just 5% of a crowd to influence the rest. The clear question is, why do humans and animals alike largely follow the crowd rather than go to their own way? Why does pack mentality occur? To truly understand herd mentality, we need to go back, way back into human history. Humans evolved over millions of years, which is bullshit. And throughout this time, herd mentality was largely a force for good. If everyone is a gully started sprinting in one direction, it may have been best to assume danger lurked at the opposite end, and joining the pack would lead to safety. If everyone avoided eating a certain plant, it could be in an individual's interest to avoid that particular herb and therefore avoid being poisoned. If everyone in the group agreed and got along, those in the group might be more inclined to trust one another, cooperate, learn from one another, and share resources. Some studies therefore suggest that humans are simply programmed for herd mentality. However, over time, herd mentality has become less necessary for basic human survival, discounting rare situations in the first world. Now, you have instances in so-called Africa where the so-called AIDS epidemic was taking place, and they were so-called vaccinating, a large population of them Hamites because of this so-called HIV that they had there. And what happened? You had the herd mentality went and got vaccinated, and a lot of them got the disease. But there were certain individuals that was like, nah, we ain't taking them vaccinations. Them vaccinations are no good. And guess what? The ones that didn't go with the herd mentality didn't get the shit because they didn't get vaccinated. You see? It says humans no longer need to run from danger or share their knowledge and resources to ensure the survival of their social groups. Then said the instinct is still there, and herd mentality can still have its uses and reasons. So it gives you a list of stuff. Whether an individual is influenced by the pack can come down to safety, social inclusions, lack of trust in oneself, distraction, or indifference. The result of mob mentality can be negative. Yep. And it gives you a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to read all of this. You could read it, on your own. Let's see if there's anything juicy here. I'll just read this part here. That's why groups will generally make poor decisions, while individuals can make much better ones. It's also a key reason why groups almost always function best with a clear leader who can make informed decisions on behalf of the group. All right, so now let's go to Psalms, the first chapter. We're going to read this chapter. This is a short chapter. This And a little something that scripture that came to mind dealing with that herd mentality, and end the lesson there. All right, but keep in mind that those wicked Pharisees and Sadducees and them, they influenced the people. So it says, Psalms 1:1, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. See, so that's a blessing, not to walk in the counsel of the ungodly. Because just because you have a large group of people doing one thing doesn't mean that you have to do it. You know, it's like a lot of times it's not too much individuality because everybody else wants to be somebody else. You know, nobody wants to be themselves. They want to be somebody else. They want to find a person who they like so that they can pattern themselves around that person. And that's where you see a lot of people that mimic other people. They want to be those people instead of being themselves. It says, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, and bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Why? Because there's a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof is the way of death. And that herd mentality, that do as thou wilt spirit, that whole do whatever you want to do, that mentality is going to get you killed. But that's something that's being pushed heavy in this society by the media, by the religions, by the entertainers, by television, by the news, by celebrities, you know. And you know damn well that clown Jay-Z that wore that shirt, do as thou wilt, he know damn well he didn't know nothing about that shit until it was introduced to him by, you know, the higher ups than him. He was told to wear that shirt. He didn't decide one day, you know what, I think I like that saying, do as thou wilt, I'm gonna wear that shirt. No, that causes a psychological effect on somebody, because they're looking at Jay-Z and they're looking at his shirt. Oh, do as thou wilt, man, that's bad, you know, not knowing that that's leaving a lasting impression in that person's mind based off of your greed, based off of your willingness to sell your own people out so that you can stay afloat, stay up top, you know. So you're leading them in the wrong direction purposely, and the Lord's going to deal with all them individuals that do that, you know. It says the ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. You see, for the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. And that's what's going to happen. The way of the ungodly is going to perish. You know, so that herd mentality is not a good mentality. You know, it's best to have your own individual spirit and be able to make decisions based off of what you've learned in this truth, you know. And then once you learn the truth and you start to see certain things, you start to be able to pick out certain things on your own. Be like, what? Oh, snap. You know, which before you would never picked up. We would have never picked up certain things if it had not been for the truth. You know, you'll see certain things, see certain people say certain things or move a certain way, and you notice it, you know, make certain hand gestures, you know, say something that to the average person may seem deep, but you're like, nah, there's something ain't right about that, you know? So, yeah, man. So this was a herd mentality, and I wrote that title down when I saw Apostle Elder Tar's video, you know, and I wanted to do a little something on it, so I just got a chance to today. I mean, I didn't really have any other subject. I was looking for some, you know, to edify with, and that's what came up. And the Spirit gave me some scriptures. I went in the red Bible that we have, I looked up some precepts, and then other precepts came. And there's one more precept here, but I'm gonna skip this one because it pretty much goes somewhat similar to how the wicked Pharisees and them, influence the people. So with that, I pray that your brothers have been edified. And until the next time I say Shalom. He know damn well he didn't know nothing about that shit until it was introduced to him by the higher ups than him. He was told to wear that shirt. He didn't decide one day, you know what? I think I like that saying, do as thou wilt. I'm gonna wear that shirt. No. That causes a psychological effect on somebody because they're looking at Jay-Z and they're looking at his shirt. Oh, do as thou wilt, man. That's bad.